Welcome once again to another episode of The Upgrade. My name is Gary Muttley. He is...
Len Carmichael. What's going on?
Oh, it's been quite a weekend, let's say.
Dude, it's been just crazy in general for me for the last week, but I don't want to harp on it. Just stuff with my dad has been out of control, so...
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, that stuff sucks. For me, it's been crazy because I was working a lot and then actually working out of the house for most of the week, which is rare. So I'm trying to build my stamina back up.
Your stamina for people?
My tolerance for people. I'm trying to build it up a little bit. Having to actually work 4 days in a week, which I haven't done in I don't even know how long. Well, 4 days in the office.
Right. My job still has determined that we're not going back until at least November. So I haven't had to deal with people or anything outside of just like my chosen circle of assholes that I spend time with, whether it's within my house or, at the studio.
You're just in a land of Zoom meetings.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I've been actually even trying to avoid those because my mind has been spinning. So anything I can cancel or not go to,
I don't blame you at all.
I spent so much time in the last week just like disassociating from the world and just watching like random shit on conspiracy theories and nonsense on YouTube to just like allow myself to be in locations where I'm like, all right, I'm normal because these people are fucking crazy. And I'm not necessarily watching people like talk about it from the standpoint of like me agreeing with them, but people tearing it apart. Like I watched a video on Flat Earth, but it was a guy tearing apart all the people who think that it's good, and he was pointing out all their examples of where they went wrong, and I'm shaking my head like, yeah, you're right, guy. I'm with you 100%. But I mean, I also don't believe in flat Earth, so it wasn't really a stretch.
Yeah, we'll have to do a conspiracy theory episode one of these days and talk about some of that stuff.
I'm in.
I can't fuck with the flat Earth thing. But
me either. It doesn't make any goddamn sense at all.
But I'll talk about UFOs. I'll talk about Nostradamus. I'll talk about all kinds of other shit.
Okay, I'm in.
Because I'm definitely a Nostradamus guy, and I'm a UFO guy. But that's another story. I don't necessarily think that we're being invaded by fucking lizard people.
No.
Although I did like the old VTV show, but that's another story. But I can't. I'm talking real conspiracy theories. I'm not talking about some QAnon bullshit.
Oh no!
No, fuck that.
No.
That's some garbage.
There's no pedophile ring under the fucking pizza place.
No, they don't eat babies. Stop. Just stop. But as I've pointed out on here before, when other shit goes down, like Matt Gaetz dragging underage going to drag underage girls over state lines, all of a sudden the QAnon people are real quiet.
Super quiet.
Yeah, so whatever for all that shit. That tells you what they're really up to. It's just a bunch of fucking nonsense.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Completely ridiculous.
Hey, I don't want to talk anymore about that bullshit.
You know what I do want to talk about? I
told you, it'll be Lewis Black rage once again. I can't.
You know what I do want to talk about?
What do you want to talk about?
The fact that I actually found myself watching AEW this past week.
Nice. See, all of my wrestling talk dragged you over to the dark side even further.
Dude, I watched about a half an hour of the show, and we'll get into reasons why in a moment. But I do want to invite our guest in. We have Marty back again. Welcome.
The legendary Marty Shea. Another
Welcome
pro
back,
wrestling
Marty.
fan.
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Hey,
we're
pal.
all right.
Well, Len, I must say you picked a very good time to check in on on the world of pro wrestling.
Oh,
Well,
yes.
I saw enough. So,
The
all right,
scuttlebutt was strong.
here's the deal. I have a Twitter.
I'm sorry.
I don't really use it for anything positive. I only
Does
use it-
anybody?
I really only use it to look at pictures that you guys can imagine that I would be looking at on Twitter. Yes, those pictures. But I also follow a couple wrestlers and a number of MMA people.
Okay.
And everybody for about a week leading up to this AEW episode kept hinting at CM Punk being there. And I knew it was going to be in Chicago, and I know he lives in Chicago. And then Gary had talked about it a couple times in the past couple weeks. And I was like, I guess I'll tune in. So I watched it when it happened, but I didn't have the visceral reaction that everybody else seemed to have because I'm not really tied to him as the wrestler. I really know him as the wrestler who came in and got his ass whipped twice in the UFC. But I also give him props for even trying. I'm not busting his stones for losing. There's no, I don't feel like he lost anything by losing. And in fact, I think he gained by losing those fights because he got my respect for even trying. Because there are so many people who talk a big game and won't even give it a try.
And he tried when he was 36. That is freakishly abnormal to try getting into MMA at a competitive level.
Not everyone can be Herschel Walker.
What? Beating up cans?
Well, just even trying. What was he like? How old was he when he
44?
Yeah, he was.
And he looked like a Rock'em Sock'em robot, bro. It was terrible. It was really bad.
But they gave him total cans, so it was entertaining.
Yeah. But so listeners, as you can imagine, what we're going to talk about today is kind of piggybacking on the last 3 episodes of the show, where we talk about wrestling.
Let me make a promise. Next week, next episode, we're going to talk about something else, I swear.
Unless something big happens.
Unless something tremendous happens. Because, listen, I love wrestling. I've talked about it many times, and we've managed to talk about it in the past couple of episodes. If it's up to me, I would talk about wrestling all the time. But we're not a wrestling podcast. We're not just going to talk about wrestling. I'm not hijacking this thing to be wrestling every fucking week. It's just such a good time to be into wrestling right now, like Marty said. And it's a great thing because, as you said, Len, and as I said when we talked about it, this is the time where people that stopped paying attention to wrestling are going to start paying attention again. And that's the best thing that could happen.
The same old thing over and over again.
I mean, it sort of woke me up too, Gary. I mean, I got to a certain point where I was burned out on the no crowd thing. If I'm being 100% honest. And I stopped watching it, really.
I can understand that. And I spent a lot of time in there. I was still watching AEW, but over time, starting last summer, certain indie shows were allowed to run in certain states. So GCW was running stuff outdoors in Illinois and Indiana. I think it was Indiana. I forget. Right. But they were running in the Midwest. They were running some outdoor shows. So I was enjoying the shit out of that. But at least with AEW, they put some of their own wrestlers up front. So it wasn't like an empty arena. Because that shit was tired.
That's true. At the same time, though, it just kind of felt like they were just kind of... You could tell they had a limited roster. Limited people could travel. I'm not knocking them. They did the best they could.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they got the Dark Order over with no crowd, which is crazy to think. They turned a heel faction face, so by which you turn 20 people basically at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, the organic thing happened after, unfortunately Brody passed.
Right.
Where it, kind of cemented them as kind of like a good guy faction going forward. But beyond that, it just kind of felt like they were spinning some wheels and seeing how long they could milk certain things.
Oh yeah.
The pay-per-views didn't, like, match quality-wise, didn't, I'd think, taper off, but...
No, they were still putting on good shows. It's just, it's a totally different vibe, and Len, you and I talked about this, and then when you went to the show, I know we talked about it also, that it's a totally different vibe when you have a crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
And the arena shows, you know, you got the big crowd, but as Len and I talked about recently when we went to the show a couple weeks ago, especially those small shows, the crowds are fucking wild, and the energy is totally different in a show like that.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, as noted, it's like going to see a band play at like a stadium or at like an arena, and then going and seeing a show at like CBGB's.
Right.
It's just two different worlds.
Yeah, but imagine being in like a bigger sized place with no crowd at all. That's
thank you.
Yeah, it's not ideal, and as Marty said, they did the best they could with it. It was weird, but like I said, I started watching a lot of those indie shows that they were doing in certain states where they were allowed to do it, and I was enjoying those a lot just because, to me, wrestling, the crowd is a huge part of wrestling.
Yeah, for sure.
And as we'll talk about, Friday night was a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm. Now, Gary, you've watched a lot of wrestling.
That's an understatement.
Can you think of a time when you've heard a pop as loud and as long as just the from the moment? Not, it was like even before, it was like people moshing to no music, like at a show. Like it was dark arena, and everyone in there, CM Punk, and then Cult of Personality starts, and then the crowd explodes.
I will tell you the closest I've ever seen to that, and it was nowhere near. The closest that I ever saw to that was the Royal Rumble in 2000 at Madison Square Garden. I was there live, and that was the debut of Taz in what was still the WWF.
That was the Taz Kurt Angle match, right?
Yes.
And he went over. He went over Angle that night, right?
Yeah. They had teased it with these little weird things popping up on the video screens as other people are doing their entrance and stuff. And it was strongly hinted that it was Taz coming in. And then it was supposed to be Kurt Angle versus a mystery opponent. And everybody knew that it was Taz. And it was Madison Square Garden. It was New York. So it was ECW country. Taz is from Brooklyn.
Right.
And Taz was like the ECW champion that everybody knew and loved. And, you know, it took when he left ECW, it was a three-way match. And the other two guys both had to hold him down to pin him.
Right.
That's how strong he left there.
Right.
So he showed up at the Garden, and as soon as his music hit and he came out, the place exploded. But it was nothing compared to what we saw on Friday night.
Yeah,
not even close. That was a big one, and that was probably the biggest one that I've ever seen, because I think the first time Sid came out in ECW, I was there, and the place went nuts, but it was nothing like that. People were just happy to see Sid, and then happy to see Sid kill a couple of jobbers.
Right.
But, and I mean kill, like literally choke slam them off the apron onto the floor. Like, oh my God, that guy is dead. But no, the whole lead into this thing was crazy, because you had everybody doing all but saying CM Punk's going to show up.
Kenny Omega's shirts every episode of Dynamite. They wearing a Cookie Monster shirt, and he's wearing a shirt that says Chick Magnet on it. Like there's these little Easter eggy things that just they reward the fans that are paying attention. It was that
so
stay
fun.
in the loop.
Yeah,
it's like, Gary, did you ever feel like WWE made booking decisions just to spite fans who were smart on the internet?
Oh yeah, I've talked about it, because I've compared him to George Lucas, and how it got to the point where it seemed like both George Lucas and Vince McMahon both hated their fans.
Right. And I think that's the difference with AEW, is that they kind of lean into they all are kind of internet darlings. That's kind of how they made their bones and kind of got to where they are. But they lean into it. They never forgot that, and they use that to their advantage. And like they know they don't have to do much to set the ball rolling in certain directions on social media. So I'd say, all in all, what we're seeing is the millennial approach to running the big wrestling promotion. Like, how would Vince have done this if Vince was hip to Twitter?
Oh.
If things were different and Vince was 30, 40 years later.
Let me give you a perfect example of how good this thing was, okay? Jim Cornette hates anything related to AEW. He spends hours on his podcast talking about how they're like fucking Cirque du Soleil. They just do flips and all this bullshit.
Calls them mud show wrestling. Kenny
Omega with his fucking jazz hands and all this other. He calls him Kenny Olivier because he thinks he's just like a fucking actor.
Right. And also, let's not let Jim Cornette off the hook for some salty things he said about like Sonny Kiss and Nyla Rose and so forth and so on. Like,
sure, he's gone all in with a lot of shit.
But it feels like he's working us. Like, it feels like he's just being a heel on the internet.
He plays it up a lot, but he said about this CM Punk thing on Friday, he said, it's not what I would have done. They did it better.
Yep.
And he put it over like he doesn't put anything over. Mm-hmm. So that's how good this was. Even Cornette was gushing about it. Because him and Brian Last, the other guy on his podcast, the two of them usually shit all over 99% of what AEW does. Whether it's the Young Bucks or Kenny Omega or Jericho or doing garbage matches and all this other shit. And he was just like, I could not have done it better. Mm-hmm. It was just perfect.
And that's... to be fair, Cornette's no slouch. We know, like, he knows, like, how to book look who he's worked with over the years. Like, he's effective at getting stuff over and understands the psychological aspects of, like, how to work crowds. Like, he's never been an in-the-ring guy. He's always been an outside-the-ring guy, and he's still involved. You know what I mean?
Well,
so,
hey man,
deference to experience.
He used that racket well. Get the fuck out of here.
He did. But also... gravity always wins, and he learned that when he fell off the scaffolding.
That is true.
That's true.
That is true. But the other thing with Cornette is that, and here's a funny thing. My issue with Cornette, because I agree with him on a lot of stuff, but not wrestling. I think, and I made this point in a conversation with somebody recently, the business has changed, but entertainment in general has changed. I talked before about how Vince has this attitude of like, what's competition? And I don't think he understands that everything is competition now. Like, everything is competing for that entertainment dollar. And that's a big problem because he's failing in that competition badly. And that's why a lot of people...
he's failing on purpose? Do you think this is a move to sell?
I have said that recently, but I've been saying for years that I think eventually he's going to sell the company, and he's just going to. It's funny. I said this years ago that he's going to sell the company and pull a heel move on his own kids, and that's starting to happen now because of all the shit that happened with NXT and Triple H. So that ball has already started rolling, and I said that at least anywhere between 3 and 5 years ago at this point. So, yeah, he might be doing it on purpose. Or he might just be getting to the point where he just does not care.
Or is it bad advice from Nick Khan? Because he's like the new,
Well, he's the new guy. But here's my thing with WWE, and this is why something like this with Punk couldn't happen in the E. Vince has total control of everything. And what has happened now... and I kind of hinted at this before, and I put some thought into it recently, and I've really come to this conclusion. Because, Len, you and I talked about comparing WWE to UFC.
Right.
And how they just don't give a shit about these guys that work for them.
Yeah, they don't care at all.
They just push them out there.
They're just a cog.
They're sick. They don't. It's corporate.
Right. If you if you don't want to do what we want you to do, we'll get somebody to do what we want done.
Right.
And you can get fucked.
The other option is that if you say no, if they don't fire you, you sit in catering and you make $500, and that $500 goes back into your gas tank and back into your stomach to get to the next arena.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or maybe creative has something for you that day. Maybe they don't. There's 170 million people on the roster now. They're not using half of them.
Maybe creative's going to put some stupid fucking helmet on you, which
the carry-on cross thing.
Oh Christ!
He's like a one-man demolition.
Oh, it's terrible.
Like, you can't hit the cross sash in the front.
Oh, it's so bad.
Like, I didn't even watch it. I just saw it from all the memes on Twitter this morning.
I saw the picture and I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, Not to digress, but I always hated demolition. I always hated it.
Well, they feel like a cheap Road Warriors.
Right. And I was just like, this is
they were total knockoff.
This just looks like Road Warriors, not so smart brother.
You know what's worse than demolition?
What?
Seeing demolition work a match in their 60s.
I don't know.
In full makeup and gear, which I have seen live.
No. Sorry, I'm out.
When my friend was doing a wrestling company and I was working security, one of the shows he booked demolition, and I was like, oh god, these guys are like in their 60s and they got the makeup on. Oh, it's so terrible.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
But anyway, back to my point. WWE now, I have decided, is corporate wrestling. Mm-hmm. There's no connection with their consumers. There's no connection with anything, with their workers. Their workers are just cogs in the wheel, like we said in previous conversations. And that's what it comes down to.
Well, Gary, I'm going to
everything is so scripted and fucked up.
Do you think maybe they've succeeded, maybe not even purposefully, on not being pro wrestling anymore and truly becoming, quote unquote, whatever the fuck sports entertainment is?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. The recent talk about the changes that they're going to make to NXT and how they're going to concentrate on younger guys and that they don't want to necessarily get indie wrestlers anymore means that they are going to isolate themselves from the wrestling business.
They don't want that outside influence coming in.
Because now all these guys that are working indies, WWE is not going to be an option for them anymore. So they've effectively just isolated themselves from everything.
I mean, I guess I get it from a front office perspective. I mean, you're in Orlando. Not everybody can be goofy. People are going to be looking for other sorts of, entertainment industry kind of employment. So they're well positioned to kind of like bring in people off the and that's the thing, is that there's a direct correlation between the greatest pro wrestlers and them being fans of the product itself prior to. Right. Like, there's exceptions like Luger, who was embarrassed to be a pro wrestler because he never even got it, even when he was one. Right. But, like, it's very crucial to be able to have the longevity and the desire and the drive. You have to come in with some sort of understanding of the platform.
Right. Well, that's why you see guys come in, work for a while, and then when things go bad, they leave, and they just leave the business.
Yep.
Like, if somebody doesn't throw Braun Strowman a ton of money, he's not going to stay in the business.
I don't think so either.
And there's a lot of guys like that, and look at some of these people that were like, you think somebody like Eva Marie is gonna go do indies?
Unless the only way it would be unless it was like one of those like WWE like ghost indies. Like, what's the one, Evolve? I think is like kind of just basically like a sub NXT brand.
Yeah, they bought Evolve. Or
like Booker's promotion at Reality Wrestling. Like, I could see them showing up at shit like that. Like, if they're also in town for like another thing on like a Tuesday or a Monday. But yeah, I think you're right. But I don't understand how long that could be sustainable for. You know what I mean? Like, if you get to a point where the most experienced in the business is Michael Cole, you're in trouble. Because like 20 or 30 years, that's what you're looking at long term, and I don't see them even lasting 5 with their current trajectory where they're going.
Oh my God, it's just so. Well, here was the point that I was going to get to, because you mentioned Nick Khan, who was like Vince's new top guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about corporate mentality before, and I've used this phrase, and I always use this phrase talking about corporate stuff, having worked for big corporations before. He's a fucking bean counter. He's a guy that's just looking at numbers on a spreadsheet and is like crossing things out and like, how can we eliminate this and this and that? And that's standard corporate mentality. So bringing him in like that was just another step to the full corporatization of that company. And at this point, I've said it before a million times, and I'll say it again. There's a lot of guys there that are counting the days that they just want out. And as you see the way they do things more and more, I don't understand how anybody doesn't want out at this point.
Now, Gary, is there a talent on the WWE roster, like active, that you look at as like the minute they're gone, you're like, it's over for the brand?
No, because I think one of the things that they've done, and they've been successful at it, but at the same time, it's exactly the problem that's going to kill them, is that they've built up the brand and tried very hard not to build up too many individual stars. Other than like Roman Reigns and John Cena.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me somebody else that they've built as like a top star. Because anytime they build up somebody as a top star, they pull the rug out from under them and fuck them.
I mean, that's basically, to correlate to UFC, 100% the same situation.
Right.
Like, so, Marty, right now there's an issue between Francis Ngannou, John Jones, and this interim champion that should not even exist right now, Gane.
Right.
Cyril Gane. John Jones.
I'm just going to stop you real quick, and it's going to be a one-sentence thing. The interim championship idea is a big turnoff for me getting into the product of UFC. I don't know why it is, but the idea of an interim champion rubs me the wrong way. If you can't defend the title, you should drop the title. Maybe that's the pro wrestling fan in me, but continue.
I don't disagree with you. The interim championship thing is born out of the idea that the UFC needs to have championship fights at the top of every pay-per-view card. That's their model. And so Ngannou said that he couldn't fight till September, but they wanted it in August. So they were like, fuck you, because this machine runs with or without you.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that. And also it's an easy thing to help them with booking, because it's like a built-in, if you look at it from a pro wrestling standpoint, Marty, it's like a built-in feud.
Right. True.
It's like as soon as, okay, he can't defend, he's going to be out for a little bit, we've got the interim guy, and then there's your feud, because as soon as that guy's ready to go, there's your match right there. So It's easy for them.
So that's where I put it in the context of, Vince McMahon, UFC. They all kind of work in that same, we don't need you, you need us.
Right.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how, like, what the corporate organization is of UFC. Are those guys independent contractors, or are they on payroll? Like,
independent contractors.
Okay, so they're
independent. Well, it's funny because it works very similar to wrestling, because they're independent contractors who can't work anywhere else, and are obligated. In their case, with WWE, it's a time frame for the most part, but with those guys, it's a number of fights.
A number of fights within a specific amount of time.
Right.
They have to be offered, whatever their contract says within whatever amount of time the contract lasts for. So
it's crazy, dude. I mean,
but then there's guys like George St. Pierre, who he's got a perpetual contract. Basically, like, he never fought the last fight on his contract, and until he fights that fight, he can't fight anywhere else.
He can't go anywhere else. Yeah, so it's very much like WWE when it comes to the whole independent contractor thing, because it's like, yeah, you're an independent contractor, but you can't go anywhere else.
Now, to my knowledge, that's also like how like movie studios and like session musicians, that's how that shit used to work back in the day. Is that like you're like an employee of Warner Brothers, and you can't go and work out of clubs. You can't go do the theater or whatever. Like, you had to be in our productions or be on our records, right?
I
It's crazy.
I don't know.
That like 60 years ago, that they got rid of shit like that. Like,
yeah, probably. Because now it's different, because now they sign you to like a multi-picture deal, and there's usually all kinds of other back-end stuff. And I don't even know really how the session musician stuff worked.
Yeah, I'm not even going to speak on that because I don't know.
Yeah, that's a totally different situation.
But if what you're saying is true, then I mean, yes, it would be basically the same thing.
And I think that's part of the reason why like the kayfabe for so long like set back like labor rights for pro wrestlers, is because like no one knew really what was going on behind the curtain.
Oh,
and
sure.
There's still a tendency to conceal.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's why like 40 years after Hulk Hogan's run and wrestling kind of hitting the mainstream, like if you look at that as like the genesis of like mainstream pro wrestling, like on cable all the time and shit.
Yeah.
Like that's why like now, like was it like 2-3 years ago is when you started to hear people on the internet talk about like healthcare for pro wrestlers and shit. 'Cause no one really thought of that.
It was longer than that. People were talking about it for a long, and talking
like,
about unions and stuff like that. But like nobody was ever going to make that work. But the other thing with it too was that with these guys being independent contractors and stuff like that, and all the kayfabe stuff, like Vince only changed on that in classic corporate fashion. Vince only changed on that to save himself some money, because it was only when they started trying to tax them as a sporting event, or however the numbers worked behind the scenes. I don't even remember now.
Right.
The bottom line of it was that suddenly when they wanted to charge him like it was a sporting event, then he's like, we're not sports. We're sports entertainment.
And I
it's
think
different.
Isn't there going to be a Dark Side of the Ring on that?
Well,
or is that going to be on the
steroids? It's on the steroid trial. This was different, and I think it may have been New Jersey. I'm not 100% certain, but that was the beginning of the sports entertainment thing, because in the end it all boiled down to money, because they were going to have to follow certain regulations as a sporting event.
Right.
And in some states, you still have to do that anyway, because that's why a lot of people don't run wrestling shows in New York, because the New York Athletic Commission is notorious for being a real pain in the ass. So a lot of guys, there's not as many indie shows in New York because they have to go through the Athletic Commission. Everybody has to get cleared, and all kinds of other hoops that they have to jump through.
Which leads to New Jersey becoming the mecca of independent pro wrestling on the East Coast.
Right.
Like, it was kind of Philly for a while there, sort of, but like with the ECW, I guess. But I feel like it's been Jersey for the past 25 years easily.
I mean, Philly does get their fair share. But Jersey definitely has a lot, because Jersey's rules are pretty light. Mm-hmm. So you've got a lot of people running shows, because when you run a show like that and you have to go through the Athletic Commission and do all that shit, it turns into a lot of money.
Yep.
Because I know, because I had a friend that used to do indie shows, and I used to work security for him. He had to have an ambulance there,
which costs money.
He had to have EMTs there, which costs money. All of these things, and it all adds up. And when you're
few more bucks than booking your buddy's bands at the VFW.
Yeah. Well, imagine trying to book a hardcore show, and you have to have an ambulance, and you have to have this, and you have to have that, and like, how much money are you really dealing with anyway? So whatever money you would be making is all pissed away on that stuff.
Yep, and then all the money out of pocket to cover the rest of the expenses you've incurred.
Exactly.
There's no way you're making money on that. It's all going to the ambo.
Exactly. That's why. But in the end, that's why Vince turned it into sports entertainment. It wasn't like a vision of some big thing. It was like, oh, let me save a couple of fucking dollars. And that's what it was. Don't think that Vince McMahon is some genius because he saw this big idea of like, oh, well, we're not sports. We're sports entertainment. He was just trying to save a couple of fucking dollars.
Then he ran with it, though, to his credit.
Of course he did.
That's the thing. That sometimes he bullshits his way into brilliance. And that's kind of, I think, when we talk about his legacy after he dies, that will kind of be the thing, is that he kind of, like, bullshitted his way into brilliance. Like the cable deal thing. Like,
oh, yeah.
That kind of happened by accident.
See, I think eventually the bubble's going to burst.
Oh, for sure.
Because I think he's been working the stock market. I compare him, and it's funny because they're friends. I compare him in a lot of ways to Donald Trump, because Donald Trump, say what you like about Donald Trump, but he's a fucking hustler.
Yeah.
So he's convincing all these people to lend him money and to back him on these business deals and this and that. And like, the word going around for years is that Donald Trump doesn't really have a lot of money, but he's got people. Yeah, he's talking people into parting with their money to go help him get whatever off the ground. And truth is, Vince is doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. Vince is working all these stock market people.
And the Saudi royal family. That's a lot of money he's got coming in there.
Because they're going back there again. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about them killing journalists and shit like that.
Yeah, that as a self-realized grown man watching a child's product, that's one of the things that makes it easy for me to be like, I don't need to watch that anymore.
Right.
Like shit like that. Like,
well, I didn't see this, but I heard it from multiple people, so I will not say that I have confirmed this 100%, but I'll throw it out there anyway. They announced that they're going back to Saudi Arabia in October, I think. And I heard that they ran a promo for it on Raw last night, and they referred to Saudi Arabia as a fun place.
Oh, jeez.
Like,
out of touch a little.
Like, that's a little.
Like, I kind of want to dissolve into the couch I'm sitting on right now. Like, it's so fucking cringy.
You gonna Homer Simpson right into the bushes?
It's a little uncomfortable. I don't know the details, and I haven't seen the actual promo, but I saw a lot of people talking about it.
I mean, right out of the gate, it's too hot to be fun.
Yeah,
it's too hot of a place to be genuinely fun.
And you're talking about temperature. You're talking about temperature. I'm thinking it's too hot as far as like there's a lot of fucked up shit going on over there, and as an American,
and then you add in all that stuff.
Yeah, as an American, it's way too hot for me.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking temperature. I'm talking about there's a lot of people with a lot of weapons and a lot of money that can make me disappear very easily.
Wasn't there like a fucking hostage situation there last time? Like where they basically had a bunch of wrestlers on a plane and someone wanted money, but the plane wasn't leaving the airport until money was exchanged somehow.
There was a lot of talk about that, but I don't think anyone has ever gone fully on record about it.
That should tell you that some shit happened.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Once again, backing up my corporate theory, mm-hmm. Here you go. When all that shit went down, Vince on his private plane was already well on his way.
Where he's going.
So in typical corporate fashion, your CEO, your founder, he's already gone. Let the peons worry about what's going on. Let them sit on a plane for hours sweating to death thinking that they're being held hostage. I don't give a shit.
I mean, that's the American way, baby. That's the American way.
Corporate bullshit.
It's also the first act of an 80s action film. Or it could be.
Hey, isn't that how Face Off started? Bunch of wrestlers on a plane. But yeah, so to wrap up, that's my theory when it comes to WWE. It's become corporate wrestling. Mm-hmm. And going back to where we started initially, talking about what happened on Friday, this is what happens when you have people who are not bean counters, not corporate mentality, corporate robots just talking about demographics and talking about this bullshit and that bullshit. This is what happens when you have people doing shit and they are actually fans.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a video that went up today. I didn't have time to send it to you, Len. I don't know if you saw it, Marty. AEW put up a video today that shows the behind the scenes of what went down.
Dude, I watched it. The whole thing. It was fantastic. It was such a cool look. And it goes to show you what they'll show you versus what the WWE will show you. Because that blew me away, dude. I never
Here's what blew my mind, Len. Since you haven't seen it.
I saw the picture of it on my YouTube feed, but I didn't click on it yet because I just didn't have the fucking time to focus on it. But I will watch it.
Yeah, what they show you is the control room where they call all the camera angles and everything. Mm-hmm. You know, the control trailer, the out back. And they've got the big screens with all the different cameras that are in the building, and they show you the entire beginning of the show, from the time where they show the intro, then they light up the pyro, then they go to the announce table, and then they do the entrance where the music hits. And you could see these guys in the back jumping up and pumping their fucking fists because they're so happy that they're creating a moment right then and there.
Yep.
Right.
Like it's like an art form to them.
It's not just some corporate bullshit.
Like, Gary, the one guy in the center, one thing that struck me is he was almost counting the beats of the music and cueing the camera to the beats of the, he was doing the conductor wand with his hand.
Yeah.
And that I was like, wow, these dudes they're jamming right now.
Yeah.
Basically they were in the moment. It wasn't like they were following. I didn't see them going through a binder. They were just calling it as they were seeing it in the moment. And dude, I was sitting there thinking, when I was watching it on Friday, it made me think on Friday. I said to Kate, I was like, if there's a cinematography for live events type category in the Emmys, consider this, because the way that was shot was incredible.
Oh yeah, and here's the difference, because I was thinking about this all day and the past couple of days. Here's the difference. Vince and his crew over there, they will try to create a moment, and they'll sit there and micromanage it, and because everything they do is scripted. In the old days of wrestling, back in the territory days, you give the guys a couple of bullet points and let them rock, and that's how dudes used to learn how to cut promos and shit. And they would learn how to do it on their own. So you could just, even in the earlier, in the Attitude Era days, you give The Rock a couple of bullet points and let him rock. Let him do his thing. And he can do it right off the top of his head. But now...
Hey, Google.
They
set
try
timer
to...
5 minutes. The mute doesn't work on usually, this is a gaming headset. It flips up and mutes. I'm sorry, Gary.
Oh, well, there you go.
No, that's perfect. Honestly, that was perfect.
hey, Google.
Now, I'm making lasagna, just so they know I got a lasagna in the oven.
We knew about the lasagna ahead of time.
I wasn't setting a timer on Gary. I apologize.
Hey, Google, burn the shit.
Wrap it up, B.
So, my point is, Vince will try to create a moment. His guys will try to create a moment and micromanage the fuck out of it and squeeze all the life out of it. And with this thing on Friday as a perfect example, but you see it every week if you watch AEW, or if you could throw the indies into this too. But AEW, using Punk as an example, they helped to enable a moment as opposed to creating a moment. They gave him, because let's face it, he's got no history with the company at all, but he's got tons of history with all these fans. So right there, they're doing it for the fans.
And from what I understand, he's got some history with some of the wrestlers that are there too, right?
Oh, sure, because there's a bunch of guys that over the years cross paths with, whether they work for the E or even indies or some of them worked Ring of Honor way back in the day.
Well, also, like, I think Punk kind of set a template for intro promo 101. Like, if you ever want to know how to hit all the beats on a debut in a new promotion, he just set, like, the way that was structured. Like, if you go back and watch how he structured that, he starts out, the first thing, first, of course, the camera work in the entrance, perfect. The crowd interaction, perfect. He comes in, and the first thing he does with the microphone is he puts over Britt Baker.
Yep.
He says, you guys sure know how to make a kid feel like Britt Baker in Pittsburgh. Now, Britt Baker has never been a WWE talent a day in her life, right? She's the current women's champion, and she had a phenomenal match and a phenomenal reaction the week before. Right?
And let's take this back a little further. I don't even think when Punk wrestled his last match, I don't even think Britt Baker was wrestling yet.
No, she was probably still in dentist school.
Yes.
For the non-wrestling fan listener, she's an actual dentist in real life.
Yes.
Okay.
Pointing that out, like practicing dentist. So, if you're ever wondering why dentists work 3 days a week, it's because some of them are pro wrestlers.
Yeah, she wrestled her first match in 2015.
Punk left in 13, 14?
I think it was 14.
Yeah. So that's the first thing he does, and then he goes in and he addresses the fans, and then he starts putting over the locker room immediately. Because for him to be himself perceived by the crowd, whether they're new to him because they're young bulls or returning fans, like, he's still got to establish credibility, right? In order for him to be a credible contender or competitor, he needs to establish credibility within the locker room as well.
Right.
And that the line you mentioned, Len, about him having scores to settle in the locker room, it's just an easy thing because he's going on the fly too.
Oh yeah,
So,
just like we were talking about. In his head, he had some bullet points, and he went over it with a couple people in the back.
Yep.
But it wasn't scripted.
Yep.
And one of the key things, by the way, which is fantastic, they gave him plenty of time.
Yeah,
WWE, they would have fucking rushed him off, because I always think about, like, when they put Ric Flair in the Hall of Fame and were fucking rushing him off stage. Like, are you kidding me?
Honestly,
give the man his time.
If it was WWE, they would have rehired Heath Slater just to send him down the road in the moment so he could hit the GTS on him.
Oh, Christ.
Like, part of me was conditioned to expect some sort of run-in during that. And I'm so glad there wasn't.
I half expected that too, but then I realized that, like, it would have ruined it, and I think they realized that too, because it was such an organic moment.
It didn't.
I use that phrase because it's, again, the total opposite of anything that WWE does. Nothing in WWE is organic. Everything is planned, and if you go off the script, they get mad at you.
Except for the pipe bomb. Even still, like,
But you see, the pipe bomb was kind of the last. That was the end, because it wasn't long after that everything was micromanaged to death.
True. And that's the thing, like...
And it was probably in reaction to that.
And they've had, like, fake pipe bomb moments where you can tell it was, like, a scripted attempt to recreate something like that. Right. Like, they tried... I think Sandow, they tried that with. They broke him away from Miz and, like, a couple other times. Yeah. They had other people did, I'm sick of working here, blah, blah, blah angle.
Yeah, but you could tell.
You know what's bad when the best thing they got going is the Baron Corbin being a sad dude all the time. I just watched those clips and crack the fuck up. That shit is so funny.
I can't deal with any of that.
It's like not even in ring. It's like apparently he had a bad weekend in Vegas while SummerSlam was going on.
Yeah.
And it's just like through his like YouTube videos, not YouTube, but it's like his like Instagram like stories and shit.
Yeah.
It's just him just progressively having a bad night in Vegas. It's actually pretty fucking funny. But other than that, like, there's nothing else to watch.
No, but the saddest thing is that you get guys because here's my thing with Punk, okay? I followed him from early on. I remember hearing about him back in the day. This was before YouTube. I heard about him, and they built him up, and eventually he came into Ring of Honor, and I saw him live in Ring of Honor many times. One of the best things I ever saw was a dog collar match between him and Raven that I've seen a lot of people mention lately because of the storytelling and the build up to the match. It was actually, Len, the match was in the Rexplex where they did Hellfest.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And Punk was in full asshole straight edge guy mode, like straight edge and better than you, and like talking shit about Raven, and then in the end they handcuffed him to the ropes and poured beer in his mouth, which was fucking wild. Because I think it was Raven and Tommy Dreamer did it, if I remember right. I could be wrong.
And like Jericho did like a dollar store version of that in the Fed with him in like 2012, I think.
Yeah,
second Punk.
Yeah, they did a few. That's one of the things he's managed to reinvent some moments, but he's done them very similar. And he's a very good storyteller. And
I mean,
so
he's never been a great athlete. Like, that's really what he makes his bones like, is that he can construct a very compelling story, whether it's inside the ring or as a promo or as a ring commentator. And that's the thing, like, he's kind of like a five-tool player in pro wrestling. No matter what he does, he's going to excel at it.
Well, let's face it. A lot of the best stars aren't necessarily the best wrestlers.
Oh, for sure.
The same way when it comes to music, like some of the most popular bands, whether it's hardcore or anything else, they're not necessarily the best bands.
Oh, of course not.
But it's just the way things go. So, but with him, I watched him from early on, and I watched him build up, and referring again to what we talked about earlier with the way things are changing with WWE. Back in the day, the only way for you to make real money and do pro wrestling full time was to go work for the E. So that was all these indie guys. That was their dream. Got to get into there. So when he mentioned in his promo that he knew he couldn't stay in Ring of Honor, that was because he had done everything he could do. That was the next logical step at that time for anybody in pro wrestling. So he did. And I watched him the whole way, and I've been a fan of his the whole time. And I saw the shit that was going on at the end of his time with WWE. And you could tell, like, he just wasn't into it. But, again, WWE was starting to do what they do all the time now, which is they let you get invested in a guy and then just pull the rug out from under him. So
which is exactly why I stopped watching NXT. I was like, I'm tired of just getting into somebody or following someone from the indies into NXT and then watching them just debut on Raw and it just be a huge bum out
just
from there on
go
out.
Straight to shit. Yeah, that's why. And on a side note, by the way, because supposedly now Vince is holding it against Triple H that NXT didn't win the war against AEW. The side note that I don't see a lot of people talking about is that, hey, maybe when you bring these guys up and then you bury the fuck out of them, maybe it reflects bad on NXT. So people are like, well, why bother watching NXT? Because they're just going to go up and then they're going to get ruined, whether it's Aleister Black or Ricochet or, Jesus Christ, Bo Dallas used to be a fucking NXT champion and they brought him up and turned him into a joke. How many other guys went from NXT up and then if they're lucky, they got a push and then eventually the rug got pulled out from under them? Even fucking Rusev, Miro, he was another one They pushed them for a while, and then they pulled the plug.
Yeah,
let me ask you this. Let me just say, sorry, Marty, let me cut in here for a second.
Please.
All the people that they've brought up from Next, have they actually made a star out of any of them once they've gotten up, quote unquote, up?
At
Has
different
anybody
points,
made it?
The Shield is going to go down as one of, if not the greatest faction in the WWE of all time.
Right.
And they were NXT graduates. With the exception of Roman Reigns, though, 2 out of the 3 had an indie background in ROH or CZW or IWA or somewhere else.
Okay.
And you've had other guys that have gotten pushes at different points, but then eventually they pulled the rug out. Bray Wyatt, Pac in AEW used to be Adrian Neville in NXT. They brought him up to the main roster and then started to book him like shit, and it just got worse and worse.
You skipped a step because this, for some reason, is a weird thing Vince does now. Is that he just likes to cut a name in half.
Oh, yeah.
They come up
That's
to
the
NXT as Adrian Neville, and he goes, "Hey, Neville," and just drops their first name.
Yeah.
Never referred to again, and it's on from there.
That's why Matt Riddle is now just Riddle.
Scum.
And it's stupid shit like this. It's just like,
is Matt Riddle even any good? I mean, I know him as
he is good
as like the UFC guy, but I've never seen him wrestle. I don't know.
He is good.
He's just basically himself, just very bro-ish.
Oh yeah, he's a total he's
stoner.
Total stoner. He's fucking Spicoli.
Okay,
bro.
Well, I don't think he could do anything else.
Yeah, but it works. It's fun.
And you pair him with a guy like Orton, who's so stone-faced, and it kind of works. They got that good kind of contrast.
Yeah, because they're tag team champions now.
I do think it's crazy or a little wild that he's done so well, because like I know that he's moved up the ranks in wrestling and like people follow him, but he honestly had a great potential at a UFC career as well. And literally smoking weed was the thing that got him kicked, and now it's totally legal and he could easily be back in there technically. And
I mean,
he's so persona non grata with the fucking ham-headed fuck that he'd never be invited back anyway.
Yeah,
true.
Well, listen, he's doing well for himself now. I'll say that.
He's probably making more money.
But he's an example, because he's another guy. He wasn't pushed as hard as some guys were in NXT, but he went from NXT and went up, and then they changed his name, and then they did a bunch of stupid shit with him, and like he's managed to stick through it. Mm-hmm. But it's not like he's ever going to be a main event guy.
Okay.
But there have been so many people that they brought up, and well, we started to talk about this, so I'll explain this to you. There was a guy who's been in just about every company you could think of, and his name was Killer Kross, and they changed his name to Karrion Kross, and they made him look like a monster in NXT. They made him look huge. He has a whole entrance with his girlfriend would come out with him, who she's also a wrestler. They signed them together, and they had this whole big elaborate entrance that looked tremendous. And they built him up to be a total monster. He was undefeated. He became the NXT champion. While he was NXT champion, they decided to suddenly move him up to the main roster, and they had him show up and immediately lose to Jeff Hardy, which I think we talked about.
We did.
So then he goes back to NXT because he still has the NXT belt, and people start chanting Jeff Hardy. And hijacked the whole thing to where they had to re-tape the intro to the show because the crowd was just shitting all over it. So finally, this weekend, he finally drops the belt, and then they bring him over officially to Raw, and he's now full-time, no more NXT, he's main roster. So they have him come out with some fucking bullshit fucking outfit that is just so ridiculous. I'm trying to see if I can even find a picture of it to show you. It was like some Mad Max shit.
Now, this may be a really deep nerd reference, but they reminded me of the Pac-Leds from Star Trek: The Next Generation. That was the vibe I got, like off the outfit. It was kind of like a little diaper and little cross suspenders up front.
Yeah, because he had kind of worn like a gladiator type of thing before, but then they just went overboard with it and gave him the big fucking helmet, and it just looked ridiculous. And I wasn't watching the show, but then I saw one of my friends post it on Facebook, and I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And the entire internet is on fire just talking about how, yep, they fucked this dude. They completely fucked this dude. And it's just like, it's just sad.
You only get one shot to make a first impression. Yeah, and when your first impression is dictated by a 76 or some odd year old man, you know, maybe he's not making the best decisions for a 30-something-year-old pro wrestler who's...
Here, Len, I'm throwing it up in the chat so you can see it.
Okay. Let me check that out. Yeah.
He looks like he's wearing a lantern fly on his face.
Yeah. Well, it looks like they just took one of Kane's, like, old things and just redid it.
Yeah, it's some straight-up Mad Max-looking shit. And it's just embarrassing because it's like, how could you even, like, come on.
That's so good.
It's so bad. Yeah,
I mean,
somebody
close.
put it together with the Mad Max stuff, and it's just like, oh God, it's just embarrassing.
And it was like ill-fitting too. That was like the worst part. It's like it didn't even look like it fit the dude's body. It just kind of looked like they're like, here, wear this. At like the last second, it was just like hanging backstage.
And he had like some suspenders type thing, and it broke during the match, so it's just kind of hanging, and it just looked so amateur. But this is what they do to these guys. This is what they do to these guys. They had a team years ago in NXT called the Ascension, and they were built up as these monster guys. And then I think I mentioned this to you before, Len. They brought them up to the main roster, and then suddenly they decided to give them fucking Road Warriors face paint and shit.
Yeah, you told me that.
And everybody was just like, what the fuck?
Well, also, like, the commentary, I remember that they debuted, I think it was the Raw after WrestleMania 30 was their debut. And immediately the commentary starts burying them. I'm like, how are you got to give these guys some sort of a chance. If you guys don't know anything about them, like, you got to let them come in.
Right.
Like, but I guess it was like JBL and Cole and Jerry Lawler at the time. And the commentary is such an unspoken important part of the pro wrestling on TV experience that's why Jim Ross is great, right? Because, people just remember the calls. Whereas I'm sitting here talking about, like, this time these 3-4 dudes are just openly making fun of these guys before their first match even started. Like, how do you expect the TV audience
to be fair, because you hear guys talk about this in interviews all the time that used to work for the E. Those guys doing the commentary constantly have Vince or somebody in their ear. So in the end, everything that they're saying is being fed to them.
Isn't he just sitting in the back at the fucking control?
Pretty much. So all the burying that they're doing is coming from on high.
The man behind the curtain. Right.
So effectively, he's burying his own shit.
It's like shoplifting from his own convenience store.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. He actually had potential, because I remember seeing those dudes in NXT and being like, not my cup of tea, but if I'm like a 7 or 8 year old kid, I can see myself being shook just by the sight of these guys, which is kind of like the magic part of like what they do. Is like that's how you build a monster. Is you got to scare little kids, right? So I was like, you see those guys and like give them the right entrance, and the right opponent, and just demolish somebody their first time out and start building that kind of monster mystique from there. I mean, you bring them out and like you turn them into like a half comedy act without probably even knowing, because it's not like they had earpieces in. They were just walking down the ring.
Right. But that's
crazy.
What they do. That's what they do. And half the time they have these guys come out and they immediately lose, which makes them look like shit. Because they did that with the Vikings also. And it's just like, how many times are you going to do this and fucking bury your own talent? It's just crazy. But listen, I don't want to go too long. I want to go back to something because I don't want to do this whole episode without shining the light on what we've kind of danced around and talked about a little bit. This whole thing with Punk, everything that he did was perfect. Yep. And for me, and I'll freely approach this. It's still real to me, damn it, territory. But goddamn, it was so fucking good. And to me, this is what wrestling is about because it's like and Len, you've talked about this before too. Like when you're younger and watching some of that territory shit, like those emotions were everything.
Right.
Like how many people got up? Like I was never a big Shawn Michaels guy, but like how many people felt something when Jannetty went through the fucking barbershop window?
Dude, when Jannetty went through the window, I popped.
How dare you?
Right. How many people have seen things over the years and gotten happy or gotten mad or gotten upset? ECW used to do a lot of that shit. Like when Raven corrupted the Sandman's kid, like people were freaking out like, oh my God.
The crucifixion angle,
yeah,
like they had to apologize for, like same show, but still, like it showed how effective it was. It was like
right because if these guys can do something and make you feel it, that's the roots of fucking pro wrestling, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter what the feeling is, whether it's going to make you mad because here's New Jack talking shit and thanking O.J. Simpson. Or
in Kentucky,
or make you sad, or make you excited that you're so happy with what you're seeing that it's there's been so many of these moments over the years in pro wrestling, and if you're a fan, those moments are important.
Yep.
And it's and that goes for entertainment because it's not even just pro wrestling. It's like, listen, for us old dudes, because the young kids don't understand this because the prequels fucked it up, but for us old dudes, what was the feeling when it was like, I am your father?
Yeah, out of control.
Like, I was fucked up for like 5 days.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's.
And I had the opportunity to rent the movie from Blockbuster the following weekend. Like, if my math is right, you all had to wait 3 years to get the payoff for I Am Your Father.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. So
I didn't have to live. I'm from the late Dark Ages, so we had access to such things as the printing press and the cellophane tape.
Yeah, I didn't have all that.
We didn't have spoilers on fucking Reddit and all that other shit.
Yo, Marty, let me tell you, I'm of the age where we had to rent the VCR to rent videotapes.
Oh yeah. I remember that
because VCRs were so expensive.
Yeah, they were like $400-$500.
It was cheaper to rent the fucking VCR for the weekend and then watch a movie twice a month than it was to actually buy one.
Yeah.
And how many of you young assholes are like, what's a VCR?
Yo, and then also let me kick this off just for a second. The price of videotapes back in the day were priced at the cost that it would be if you actually were a movie place. Like if you were renting a movie, renting movies out. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to spend this $20. No, if you wanted to own that tape, that motherfucker cost you $100.
Here's 3 words for you: priced for rental.
Yep.
Because if you were buying it, you had a video store.
Yep.
So you were paying big money based on how many rentals you were going to get out of that bitch. But
now I can just sit at home and just look at a screen and not find anything of interest to watch, and then end up on YouTube falling asleep to some dumb shit about history.
Wait, are you at my house?
Because I was going to say guilty, very, very guilty.
because that's how I go. I really don't watch TV at all.
I don't watch a lot of TV. A lot of it is
right.
A lot of the TV that I watch is actually just DVR. Whether it's wrestling or whether it's like The Walking Dead or some other shit that I watch.
Well, that's what I not to wrap this up, but to kind of get to the point of what was stated at the beginning. I actually went and tuned my television to the right channel because I knew this was coming up. I figured out what time of day and what day of the week, and I happened to be home, and I watched it.
Yeah,
that's what making a groundswell in 2021 is about.
You didn't wait for the YouTube clip. You didn't wait for.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we planned our whole day. Or like Kate will tell you, we were like back forth, like, yo, I cannot wait for Rampage.
Oh yeah,
I
same
can't
here.
fucking wait for Rampage tonight.
Same
here. The whole day, dude. Like,
I'm sitting on my couch at like 9:45, like watching, like 10 o'clock yet, 10 o'clock yet, 10 o'clock yet.
Like, we like ordered food and shit to coincide with, like, make sure like it got everything, situated. We did the whole thing. It was great. It was great.
But nowadays, to Len's point, nowadays that doesn't happen. Everything is just like, whatever, I'll get to it. But that's how important this was to a lot of people. Whether you're a big fan or you're somebody that's curious, that is a big deal.
And also, like, it's hard to make me kind of question what's going to happen anymore, like, on a pro wrestling episode. Because, like, by and large, I got an idea of where things are headed once they're presented to me. I just want to see their spin on how, I want to see their take on it. I want to see how they riff this.
If you're a diehard fan, that happens a lot. Because a lot of times, some of the best stories, they'll kind of repeat and add a little twist to it or something like that. I compare it, as much as I hate Shakespeare, it's kind of like Shakespeare, because people with Shakespeare, it's like, you know what the ending's going to be, but it's the telling of the tale.
The portrayal and
it's the story and how you get there. And for nowadays, and this goes back to what I was saying before about Vince's attitude about competition. Nowadays, you're not just competing against another wrestling company. You're competing against that fucking Fire Stick. You're competing against that DVR. You're competing against all of these things are demanding your entertainment. You can't necessarily say dollar, but your entertainment mind, your entertainment wants and needs, because there's so much content out there now. There's
way more than 24 hours of content per day. Like, there's no way you could be hip to everything at the same time anymore.
No.
Like, it's not like you could theoretically watch every primetime network show episode within the span of a week using a VCR or multiple VCRs. Like, you could pull that off if you were really that much of a no-lifer, right?
Yeah.
There's so much content now that the most one person can get has to still be within 1% of all the available content that's out there now, like on demand.
Yeah.
So
and that goes for everything.
Yep.
That goes for everything. But even I've talked about it before when we were talking a lot about pro wrestling, just wrestling content now between all these different streaming services, because New Japan has a streaming service, and there's IWTV, which has a lot of independent stuff, and Fight TV has a lot of pay-per-view stuff, and High Spots has their own service, and Ring of Honor has their own service. So just wrestling alone, there's tons of options there just to watch wrestling on demand anytime you want it. And then add all kinds of other stuff, all these other channels that have their own streaming service, whether it's HBO or AMC or whatever. There's so much content out there that for you to actually get somebody to do what what all three of us did, which is to sit there and plan it out and like, okay, I'm going to be ass on couch at 9:45 waiting. Mm-hmm. That's a feat nowadays.
Yep.
Because most people will be like, I'll just watch the clip on YouTube later.
Exactly.
Whatever. So that's the impact of something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And
destination
I don't think
television. It's a very rare thing. Like unless it's a pay-per-view where you're literally paying money to put it on your television, then of course you're gonna. Right. Or maybe you find another way to do things, and you get your content and you just chill on it. But But
I'll also point out another thing. They sold out the United Center in Philly on hints and rumors.
I thought it was Chicago.
Chicago. Why did I say Philly? I'm fucking burnt. They sold it out based on rumors and hints because never once did they say CM Punk is going to be in the building. They hinted at it heavily, dropped jokes, whether it was the fucking Chick Magnet and Cookie Monster t-shirts or whether it was Tony Khan saying, listen, we have no intention of disappointing fans tonight. But they never said he's going to be here. So in the end, it probably would have ruined their company, but they could have just been like, no, he's not here.
Yeah, and like I was booking the show in my head leading up to it, obviously, as a wrestling fan, I'm like fantasy booking how I think tonight's going to go down. I had it coming in last. I really thought they were going to be able to thread the needle. But then as soon as I heard the crowd, I'm like, there's no way. There's no way they can't.
That was. I had that discussion earlier in the day. I said they have to lead off with this because there's no way that crowd is not. And it was confirmed as soon as they went on air because immediately the chant started. Mm-hmm. I said they have to lead off with it because otherwise the whole show is going to be hijacked.
Yep. And that's the thing. They know their fan base. Like they knew well enough to know, that we were looking to the fans there would have hijacked that moment.
But it's not even just knowing it because Vince would know it too, and Vince would be like, fuck him.
You just go ahead. Yeah, he'd go headlong into it.
He would. Yeah. He would totally because here's an example of Vince's mentality. Just for a little side thing here. If you go to any indie show, Lane, I'm sure you saw it. And even if you watch a lot of the TV stuff, somebody goes for a pin, and they count, two, 1, 2, and then they kick out, and everybody in the crowd screams 2. Mm-hmm. Or when you have a guy doing an intro, the ring announcer's doing an intro, and they say this match is scheduled for 1 fall. All the crowd is like 1 fall.
Yeah.
Right.
Vince had his guys stop doing that stuff. Well, not the 2 counts, but the ring announcing stuff. They stopped saying the 1 fall thing because Vince didn't like that they were saying it.
Yep.
So it's like that much control. Instead of leaning into it and enjoying it.
Yeah, let the people have their fun.
It's like you got to beat it out of them, and
he's been sweetening crowd reactions on TV for years too. Like that's. And it's so obvious.
Well, that's another thing. They manipulate the shit out of the audio. And it's like, why? Like, why can't you just let these people have their moment? And that's why the Punk thing was so important because it was a moment. And that's the kind of moment that Vince would never let them have.
Yep.
It would never happen. And it's just embarrassing because it's like, you know what? This is good content. And not to pat myself on the back, but when we had this discussion a couple of weeks ago, one of the things I said to you, and Punk mentioned this specifically in an interview, was this idea of building trust with the fans.
Right.
And Punk said that one of the reasons why he knew that he was making the right move was the trust with the fans, but also with the workers, which I mentioned too. And I said, if you build a good place, people are going to want to go there. If they want to go to the DE at this point, it's because of the money.
Only because the money.
Yep.
Because you watch the way they book these guys, and it's like, I wouldn't, if I were a pro wrestler, I wouldn't want to go anywhere near there because it's career suicide.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if I have the choice, which a lot of these, guys who are either, they're through their young lion phase at New Japan and are looking to come back home, or if they're looking to bust out a Ring of Honor, like this is viable now. Like there's another option. Like they don't have to try to. Can you hear me?
I'm not getting you guys at all.
Oh no, I'm hearing you, Marty.
Okay.
Hello.
We lost Gary.
Yeah, we lost Gary.
But yeah, there's another option for like the up and coming talent now.
I lost
pursue.
you for like a good 30 seconds there.
Okay.
Yeah, we were still good over here without you.
Really?
Yeah, we moved on without you.
TLDR, it's just nice for like up and coming talent who are coming out of like the lower levels of the indies to have another place to consider going.
Right.
To do tryouts at.
And now at this point, the E is positioning themselves very heavily with the decisions that they're making, that they're not going to be that destination anymore. But the problem with that is that that also goes for the fans too, because everybody's talking about the CM Punk thing and everybody's talking about how amazing it was. And I guarantee you, perfect example, Adam Cole just finished with NXT.
How do you let that guy walk with all that talent?
Well, do you think he's going to re-sign with the E?
No.
Why would he? His girlfriend, because Len, if you don't know, Britt Baker is his girlfriend.
Oh well, we know where he's going then.
Yeah, but just based on booking and the way that they've booked everybody, what are they going to do? Move him to the main roster and make him wear a fucking gladiator outfit, or have him run around fucking chasing people for the 24/7 title? Like, no. Or dress him up like a fucking superhero? Jesus Christ. So at this point, just like I said, these guys aren't going to want to stay there. They're not going to want to continue to work for that company. Mm-hmm. Like it's just spoiled at this point. Like it's spoiled milk. It's like I don't want anything to do with any of that. That's not good for my career. So now you have guys, and I mentioned this on a previous episode also, you had guys going there, these older dudes. You had guys like Mark Henry and the Big Show going over there. And you had, you already got Jake Roberts, Tully Blanchard. And these guys are saying, hey, I'm over here and I'm being respected. And I'm being treated well.
Yep.
This is the place to be.
Right.
Yep.
So it's the place to be. So when you got a guy like Punk, who people are chanting his name all these years later, he's been away for 7 years and you wouldn't know it.
Yeah. I mean, when he showed up, I was like, okay, this dude is still a big, big, big star.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, that was the conversation that we had when we talked about paradigm shift in the business. I said he's a needle mover. Mm-hmm. He's a game changer because you bring him in, you're going to bring a lot of eyes to your TV show. You're going to bring a lot of eyes to your company. And it's not just the eyes of fans, but it's also, again, people who are in the business. They're going to be like, wow, they brought this guy in. He's willing to work with them. Like, that tells me something.
Well, unless you're Booker T, because apparently Booker T's been like handed the assignment from the company to like try to say there's anything fucking wrong with that promo. Yeah, which was literally a perfect promo.
Hey, Len, let me get your opinion on it as the lesser wrestling fan of the three of us. Mm-hmm. What if I told you that Booker T said that appearance, that comeback was a miss?
That means that somebody told him to say that.
Right.
Because there's nothing about that appearance, that comeback, that was a miss. There was no missteps at all. Like, from the entrance to the speech to the not just the physical speech, but the content of the speech. Because you can deliver something and have the content be off and it's still decent delivery. No, right. He had great delivery and great content. Mm-hmm. And as you said, no run-in, but still had Sting and the other dude, I don't know his name, up
Darby
at the
Allin.
So, you still had you built a little angle right off the bat. Mm-hmm. Like, there was no miss in that.
And like a lot of people that gravitate towards a guy like Darby Allin is because they see a lot of CM Punk in a guy like Darby Allin. He's not a body guy. Like, he's obviously like not like the looks guy. Like, he comes from like a different place. but obviously is like from what we've seen of Darby Allin. Like if you've never seen any of his matches, Len, check him out. He's a very reckless individual, and he is the ultimate of sacrificing his body for entertainment's sake.
Okay. That's the guy I told you was stage diving during Indecision when we played in Florida.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah. That I didn't even see it, but I wouldn't have recognized him back then because I only heard the name. But Tom Indecision was the one that told me. He's like, "Did you see Darby Allin stage diving?" And I was like, "No." Like I didn't even realize that because I didn't know who Darby Allin was at that point. That was a couple of years ago. Right. But he's a hardcore dude. Mm-hmm. And he's younger, and he's basically the new generation CM Punk in a lot of ways. Just a little more reckless and a little more daring because he likes to hang out with the jackass dudes, and he's a fucking skateboarder.
Okay.
So
then it's built into him.
Right. He took a body bag bump, Len, and I thought it actually killed him when it happened.
Oh yeah.
I was like, "There's no way his neck isn't broken." The way he took that bump.
About that.
Well, he did that. He's done that a few times because he did that in Evolve, and I saw that and I was like, "Oh God!"
Idea.
And then they did it again in AEW, and I was like, "Oh no, not again!" He's crazy.
And like that's like also like this simple brilliance. Like all of CM Punk's like moveset is all like very simple, like stuff that anybody could really do.
Yeah, he's not a flip guy.
No, he's not. Like he's barely a dive guy.
Yeah.
And from a generation of dive guys, like he was never like that. He would do them, but not with the zeal of say Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson. Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing. Like the prospects, like not only Darby, like all these other, like we never even saw Punk versus Moxley at any point.
No.
They never crossed paths in WWE in ring. And there's a bunch of guys like that. Like, did he ever really feud with Cody? Did he ever have a program with Cody?
I think he had a few matches with Cody. Because they were in the E at the same time, so I'm sure.
Right.
At the very least, tag matches. I'm looking it up now. They've been in the ring many, many times.
Okay.
Going back, even they actually tagged together in Ohio Valley.
No shit. Okay, so yeah.
But yeah, Punk versus Cody Rhodes on Raw. Tag matches. They tag together on Raw at different points. So they have some history together. Okay. On either side. They tag together and then they've been on opposite sides as well. But I don't.
He's never worked Omega though.
No, he's definitely never worked Omega.
There's a lot of those. I don't think he's ever worked Spears.
Well, you know what? I wonder if he ever crossed with Omega. No, he's never worked with Omega at all.
Now, yeah, that's money right there.
But there's a lot of guys on that roster, and he's one of those guys. And he made it clear, and he mentioned it even in other interviews that he's done, that he wants to work with some of these younger guys. And I'm going to
throw an angle at you.
Go ahead.
All right, so you know how they were going to do Tanahashi versus Ambrose for the U.S. IWGP title?
Yes.
At All Out, and they scrapped it?
I know, which I wanted to see so bad.
All right, so
I love Tanahashi.
I think they're still going to do that match, but what's the next one, Revolution?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so I'm hoping they really test the Forbidden Door, right? And so you take the U.S. title off of Tanahashi. You put the title on Tanahashi, take it off of Moxley at Revolution, and then you get Punk at the Dome versus Tanahashi.
Oh,
for the
Jesus
US
Christ.
title for Wrestle Kingdom. Do you see Punk turning that idea down?
No.
If given to him?
No, absolutely not. But that's one of the great things now that I think is so good, and Len and I talked about this a little bit, and it's just the fact that this whole Forbidden Door thing where all these companies are all working together, and then the E is just isolating themselves further and further.
Right.
And everybody else is having fun.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else is elevating the business.
And everybody's just paying money to have fun along with the fun creators.
Oh, sure.
I mean? So.
Sure, because listen, I'm going I mentioned this before we went on air. In September, I'm going to 4 different wrestling shows within the span of 2 weeks. I'm going to Dynamite in Newark. I'm going to Dynamite in Queens. And then the 2 nights after Dynamite in Queens, GCW was running 2 nights in Queens. And I'm going to all 4 of those shows, and I can't fucking wait.
And the thing is, Gary, anybody can show up anywhere right now.
Oh, sure.
Except for from one place and one place only.
Which is the place that I don't even care about anymore.
Exactly.
Because
that's part of the fun.
Once I was barely watching NXT and I hadn't watched the main roster stuff in a while. My official breaking point with the main roster, I don't even think I told Len this. There's a dude named Apollo Crews.
Uha Nation.
He used to work as Uha Nation in the Indies, and then they signed him. Black dude. Mm-hmm. And he'd been with the company for a couple of years at this point. And he's capable of doing a lot of the high flying stuff because he used to do that more in the Indies. And then when they brought him in, he wasn't doing so much of that. So at some point, they suddenly decided to give him a fucking African accent.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And I was like, oh, God, this is stupid. And I hadn't watched main roster in quite a while. And one of these... But I still had the network because I still watched all the NXT stuff.
He was already established on the roster as not having an accent. And like a brain injury victim just shows up on Monday with an accent.
Yeah. Yeah, which made no sense. But here's what made me turn it off, Len. I hadn't watched the main roster stuff in a long time, and there was a pay-per-view, and I decided, hey, you know what? I forget what pay-per-view was. I was like, let me turn it on, whatever it was, Hell in a Cell or fucking Money in the Bank, whatever. And I turn it on, and there he is with his African accent, and he's holding a fucking spear.
See, this is why I've always kind of had I hate WWF, WWE mentality, while some of the other wrestling companies have had loosely racist trope things going on. The WWF whatever has always been so over the top with it, and it's always really irritated me, and that's just another nail right in the coffin for me.
You know, to bring it back to what we're talking about with Booker T, a lot of people are on the internet that I've read referencing a very certain Triple H Booker T feud that happened about 20 years ago in relation to how Booker T is now towing this company line, but saying it's his own opinion on his podcast. So Gary knows what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it confirms everything you just alluded to about the WWEFG HIJK
Yeah. Although in the back of my head, I just keep hearing, "We're coming for you." Because
Hulk Hogan.
Oh my God. One of the best hot incidents of all time ever. Not just pro wrestling.
I love that.
You can watch that in slow motion. Remember how Sonny was doing the slow burns?
Yep.
Of people moshing? Yeah, I would pay for a slow burn of everybody in that frame's facial reaction once the word hit their ears.
Yeah. Sherry Martel immediately starts cracking up.
Sherry's nurturing Booker. She's holding his arm it's gonna be fine. We'll get through this.
Okay. Well, she's cracking up like a motherfucker.
Let's get you out of here. Let's go.
You can hear someone off stage getting Gene Okerlund's martini glass ready for as soon as that shoot was over. Because that man needed a double as soon as that was done with.
Oh my God, what a moment! So just before we wrap this up, back to Punk. I want to get what you guys think, having watched it and seen at least some of the aftermath on the internet. I predicted before this even happened that this was going to be a game changer if they did it right. And I couldn't, knowing what we were talking about before, that these guys like Tony Khan are real fans and that they're trying to do real things for real fans. I didn't think they could fuck this up, and they hit it completely out of the park. More Like I said, so much so that Cornette was putting it over.
Yep.
Do you guys think this is going to be a game changer?
Well, I think I'll start off because I'm way outside the box here.
Yeah.
Anytime that Punk shows up, it's going to be a big deal for AEW and the people who are watching. And I think that will spawn a whole new amount of people that will continue to pay attention to AEW, which will then, snowball. It'll be a snowball effect of then there are going to be a bunch of people paying attention to even smaller promotions because they're going to see other people due to watching AEW. Mm-hmm. I think that it sets a tone for the future, and I think they're setting themselves up really well. What they do with it is yet to be seen, but it doesn't seem like they're going to fail with it.
Right. Not to put you on the spot, Len, but are you going to continue to watch?
I don't know if I'm going to continue to watch. I mean, if I know he's going to be on, maybe I'll tune in.
Well, because he kind of hinted at
he already said he'll be there Wednesday.
Yeah, he's like he's like, we got plenty of time. I got Wednesdays, I got Fridays.
Yeah, he on Twitter
Sunday
today.
Every 2 months or something.
He called Milwaukee Philwaukee on Twitter. It was brilliant.
Because I'll tell you this, I'm excited as shit to see him 2 weeks in a row live. I'm like, I was already excited just because I really enjoy what AEW is doing from the jump. Mm-hmm. But the fact that I can go, and I haven't seen Punk live since I stopped going to E shows before he joined. So I probably haven't seen him live since Ring of Honor. So it'll be a long time.
I never got the chance to see him live.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw him in the E because I stopped going to the E shows long before then. Mm-hmm. So this will be my first time seeing him in a good 15 years.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And the other thing about it, Gary, is that I'm just waiting for the inevitable CM Punk heel turn. Whenever that they decide the switch needs to be flipped, because he could just be himself and be like kind of like a tweener babyface and just kind of be witty, and like some people might rub the wrong way or whatever. But if he goes full heel, we are in for some shit. I can't wait.
I'll say this: that will take a tremendous amount of work on his part. But even then, me being a fan of heels, I think I'd probably like him even more.
Yeah, absolutely, same. Like I'm like at this point, like I love the bad guy. Like, that's why like, MJF is one of my favorite characters in the show.
Oh my god,
he's one of the best promos ever.
Like, for sure. But I see that's why I think that won't happen, because that's the feud that's going to happen, because there's a picture of MJF as a kid with CM Punk. Yep. So that feud is guaranteed to happen sooner or later. It won't happen anytime soon, and I'm good with that, because I think one of the great things that AEW does is that they let things boil for a long time.
Yep.
And the E never does that, and ECW used to be really good with that, because like they built up Taz versus Sabu, and those guys didn't touch for like over a year. Mm-hmm. And everybody wanted it, and everybody was electric about it, and they teased the shit out of it for a long-ass time. Yep. And then finally, when everybody got it, they went insane. So I can see that happening.
MJF has been like working I think he's actually wrestled 6 matches tops in the almost 3 years now.
Yeah. He's
all he does is just
talking and setting it up. And listen, he can wrestle.
He can when he decides to every 3 or 4 months.
But that's fine, because you know what? Then it doesn't get stale.
Yeah, he's his own Bobby Heenan for the rest of the time, and it's great.
Yeah, which is perfect. But yeah, I think that's a feud that they'll eventually do. Listen, there's so many possibilities, and that's with what they've already got. It seems like they've got a few more surprises in store. I don't want to see them overload it, but I think the guys that are being rumored are real quality guys that are going to bring even more eyes to the product. So I'm all for it as long as they continue to maintain that balance of like booking their guys that they've already invested some time in, like Hangman Page, but also working in this new talent. Like if they bring in Adam Cole, if they bring in Bray Wyatt, if they bring in Danielson, the one bad thing is that eventually they're going to have to start cutting some people loose just because they're going to have too many people.
Or, I mean, they're already starting to sow the seeds of brand expansion. So, I mean, they just got to be careful about how they expand.
Right.
And knowing when to cut. Like, they don't, like, if there's anything to say about the recent WWE cuts is that none of them make sense. It used to be when that kind of, that dark day around WrestleMania time would roll around when all the releases would come up after WrestleMania. Yeah. You'd see the list and 70% of it or more made sense. You're like, oh, they've barely been on TV. Right. They've been hurt. They suck. They haven't gotten over no matter what they've done, so forth and so on. Right? There were very little surprises. Only been like recently, past 2-3 years, where it's like, holy shit, they let that guy go. Right. They let her go. They let so and so go. Like,
See, but that's again, to me, that's that corporate thing because they're just so far removed from the idea of the creative process that like they don't see that these guys can go somewhere else and make somebody else money.
Right. Now, would you rather the WWF go out of business or for it to be good and to have all the promotions at this point?
I'm starting to feel, well, I don't think they're ever going to disappear, but my thing with them is that I wonder if they're going to get bought out and then just become somebody's little niche project.
NBC on Peacock Network, which it
well, a lot of people said, well, here's the thing. Before COVID, there was a lot of talk that they were looking for somebody to go in as a content partner with them. And the rumor was that they were going to make a deal with Amazon and that whoever they made a deal with, and this was an article in like Forbes or something, and it was in January of 2020. They basically said that whoever they go in on a deal with would be a precursor to them selling the company to them.
I think I recall seeing this.
Yeah. Right, and if it was Amazon, that eventually Amazon would buy out the whole thing, or if it was whoever else. And then COVID kind of fucked all that up, and then eventually the Peacock deal happened. So in the back of my head, that's always what I think about, and then I wonder what would another company do with them, and would they make them a priority? Because they might make them a priority first, and eventually they fall to the wayside, because Ring of Honor is owned by a major media company, and you wouldn't know it because they don't do shit with them.
True. Well, you know what?
And they just kind of exist in their own world. What
company owns them, I'm kind of glad that they are not putting their hands into that product. Because Sinclair Broadcasting is a little shady.
Oh, yeah.
So that's actually fine, right? Let ROH be ROH.
Oh, sure. That's cool. Sure, I'm not complaining about it, but just in the sense of, like, expansion, AEW pops up out of nowhere, and, like, nobody, like, Ring of Honor is not competition for them.
Yeah.
They're just there, and
they're a feeder at any point, at this point, right, more than anything.
So if you look at it in that sense, in where it fits into the business, if somebody else takes it over, I don't know what direction they would take it in. It really depends, because they could just look at it as just like a little side thing that we do, or they could see it as a major brand. But again, no matter which way you go with that, you're going to fall back into the trappings of what I talked about earlier, which is being corporate, where you have that disconnect, because Marvel is an example of becoming more corporate but still maintaining that connection. Like they still pay attention to what fans think, and they're still doing good stuff. And there are plenty of other companies, and I guess you could say DC to a point can be like this, where they don't have that connection the same way. And a lot of the stuff they put out, a lot of fans are like, and they're not really catering. And honestly, I got to say, Star Wars has become like this too, which is something we've discussed many times on this podcast. They don't have the same connection with their fans. There's a disconnect there that works against them a lot of the time.
What you saying with Star Wars are still a disconnect?
Yeah.
I would say for the film wing of Lucasfilm, absolutely. I would say the Filoniverse is they're knocking it out of the park.
Though. Oh no, when you add stuff, when you look at the Mandalorian, but that's a perfect example. If you look at Star Wars, the Mandalorian and Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, that's the right way to do things, and the sequel trilogy is the wrong way to do things.
Right.
Like now, that's when you're out of touch with your audience.
Yeah, I mean, we could maybe do another episode on this because we get way into the weeds on that stuff. But you want to go for 4 hours, boy? Yeah, right.
Shit.
For real. But yeah, I mean, like I was saying, but at least there it's almost like a parallel to NXT main roster is that like in the Filoniverse, whether it's Clone Wars or Rebels or Mandalorian, and any of these upcoming projects that are coming, like the Bad Batch was fantastic, right?
Yeah.
They're doing more of a service to the legacy of the fandom,
right?
Than most people. Now, I incorporated edibles into each one of my big screen experiences with the film. So all the films were a fantastic roller coaster to me when I went. So every time I came out of the movies, right, I was like, oh, what's everyone talking shit? I had a great time, dude. And then I'd watch it de-edibled later, and I'd be like, oh, word, okay.
I was going to say, that was definitely not my reaction, but I was edible free.
Yeah.
Because The Last Jedi, I went with Glenn Billy Club, and the two of us were just like, what the fuck did we just watch?
I got to tell you right now, I still have not seen it. Intentionally at this point, because I have access to Disney Plus. I could watch it right now. I could put it on the TV just to my left and watch it. But based on everything that everybody's said, I'm not going to sully my mental with it.
As I've told you before, there's a big part of me that wants to tell you watch it so that we can have conversations about it. But then there's a big part of me that's like, don't do it to yourself.
Well, here's the thing. There could come a day where a certain little man is going to force that film into your life because he saw it at his friend's house and wants to watch it.
I cannot be swayed. I still have.
So you're going to be like, all right, I'll be in the other room.
Yeah, pretty much. I haven't seen Lion King yet. He's watched it a million times.
Really?
I still have not seen it once.
Wow.
Never?
Fuck out of here. I'm not watching
I watched
it.
it twice in the movie theaters, like one day. That was like second, third grade.
Yeah, Lion King came out. I was in college, bro.
Yeah. No, I get it.
So I didn't see it. I have no idea what goes on in that movie. Somebody referenced it, and I was just like, I don't get the reference. I don't know what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, I've seen it a few times. But, kids.
Yeah.
Hey. But,
I maybe I'll see it one day, but I doubt it.
Anyway, as we were talking about, just to wrap up, I think this is a game changer. I think as proven, Len, by your interest in this as the lesser wrestling fan of the three of us, it's bringing people back to wrestling. And I think that's a great thing. And I am hoping that they continue that momentum and they get people to come back and stay. Mm-hmm. And I think that's their goal also. And frankly, that's Punk's goal. Because he's pretty much said, I'm back and I'm going to be here.
Yep.
And I think that's awesome. And as a fan, I can't wait.
Yep, bound to happen.
Oh,
bound to happen.
It's going to happen.
You're going to see those films and be like, yeah, not so good. You might think more exciting than...
Hold on. For everybody that's listening, I just shared a pair of pictures of London at like a Ripley's Believe It or Not, or I don't know, Guinness Book or whatever, like one of those places that has statues, and he's posing with Darth Vader, and then separately with R2 and C3PO.
And if you're
price too, nice.
If you're new to the show, London is Len's son.
Yes, and he's got a big cheese and goddamn smile on.
And a fire Hawaiian joint.
Yo, he's excited about that Hawaiian shirt. And I told him that he would need to hang out with Matt, get down with the King of Comfort.
Yep. Get him a little tiny expensive amp and a little tiny cheap guitar, and
just riff all day.
Tones all day.
Oh boy!
Thank you for being here, Marty.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thanks, Marty. We'll have to book some time for that Star Wars conversation.
Facts. Well, I don't go anywhere anymore. So
we'll leave a nice 6-hour block open for that one.
Yep, we'll have to get Lucas in to edit that and then re-edit it 30 years later because he'll still be alive and we won't.
Because somebody listening to this is like, oh, he talks about pro wrestling all the time. He won't talk about Star Wars for that long. Wrong.
Oh,
yeah, wrong is right.
Very, very wrong. We don't use the video, but for those of you listening, behind me is a big fucking Death Star banner on my wall and an Empire Strikes Back poster. And eventually this room where I record this, that I refer to as my studio, is going to have a lot more Star Wars stuff because I have a bunch of Star Wars Legos that I'm going to put up in here on a shelf and a bunch of other Star Wars toys and stuff that I have in my collection.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah, if you think I talk a lot about wrestling, listen to me talk about Star Wars with fucking Marty Shea.
You should just turn that room into garbage compactor 3263827 and get the monster.
I was going to say, I just have the fucking monster.
Honestly, that was my favorite part of that whole thing, was like them trying to get out of that thing. I fucking love that scene.
You know what the best part was, being a fucking kid around that time? The fucking toy version of that had the little monster that came up.
Yeah, that was pretty fucking awesome.
Fucking fantastic.
Apparently that was like the worst thing ever to shoot. I think the character got hurt.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
Something like that.
Well, I mean, you've got a bunch of fucking stuff jamming all around you.
Yeah, and you're all wet and shit.
All right, let's leave this for Star Wars.
Yeah. Put the ellipsis on this.
What time is it? We can go till 3 a.m. Sure, let's go.
Marty has lasagna to eat.
That's right. Forgot about the lasagna.
Yeah, I wasn't even staring.
Google didn't burn your lasagna?
Nah, I burned the roof of my mouth a little bit because I'm an impatient guy. You know.
Oh, well.
It smelled good. I couldn't help myself.
That's how I am with pizza.
Yeah, I was just going to say, me and pizza, I'll do the same shit.
You know, I wish lately delivery would get here to be in that state to where that was a possibility anymore these days, but, you know.
Oh, Marty, yesterday I was down in Philadelphia picking up an amp for the studio. So I picked up a Rev generator amp off of some guy from Delaware, but he drove up to like right by the airport to pick it up so I could like do the exchange with him. And I was going to go to Gaetano's to get pizza, but they were fucking closed. I called them. They were like, yeah, we close at 6, and I was pulling up to the Wawa at 6. I was like,
6?
Son of a bitch, who closes at 6 o'clock on a Monday night?
What the fuck?
They do whatever they want there.
They make their money for the day, and then they're like, all right, we're done.
Yeah.
6?
So their homemade pasta sauce might be better than their pizza. Like, we used to get our, like, fresh, we get, like, sauce from there, take it home, because it was, like, 5 minutes away.
Len might drink it like the fucking...
I might.
Like
I might bake that shit. Like, what are we talking about right now?
Yeah, well, what were we talking about with Steve last week that you were drinking? Oh, the au jus.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that could be a beverage. Yeah. You can have a whole episodes of sauces and gravies that could also double as beverages.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I'm just sipping on this. Jus.
Oh, my God.
Oh, what you got? I got that jus, boy.
That's all right. That whole episode, I'll just be talking about malt liquor. Like, Steel Reserve. Ooh, Colt 45.
Oh.
Ooh, laser.
But yeah, so I mean, I love Gaetano's pizza.
And that's so good, dude. There's another location in Springfield that keeps like separate hours. So, yeah. I don't know. They might have closed it down now with COVID, but they were running like they would do like Thursday through Sunday, and it was like more of an evening hour, like dinner rush thing.
So
so not pussy 6 o'clock.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, their pizza's like that good to where they can just, keep those bankers' hours and still.
Well, what it is they sell
profitable.
out whatever they plan to sell for the day, and they're closed. That's it.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
So, I first found out about Gaetano's Pizza when I started working at Red Planet Studios.
Oh yeah, dude.
I did the first Bottom Feeder EP or demo or whatever. We're down there recording. It was like my first weekend actually working in the area. And Kevin was like, hi, no surprise. And like, yo, we should get pizza. And I'm like, well, he was like, Gaetano's is around the corner. I was like, all right. And Joe Bacudo is also like, yeah, that place is great.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
And I'm like, all right, whatever. And then this pizza shows up and it's sauce on top, cheese on bottom. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't know about this, guys.
What kind of game are these guys running?
I don't know about this. And then I take my slice, and I immediately eat 3 more slices because it's the greatest pizza I ever had.
And it's like heavy pizza too. It's not like.
So this falls into is it pizza or is it not pizza? Is it an Italian meal or is it pizza? And Gaetano's Pizza is more of an Italian meal than pizza.
Yeah.
Because it's basically like bread lasagna.
Pretty much, but I feel like the crust and the lower portion of the crust is crisp enough to pick it up with one hand.
Yeah, you can.
It's not some Chicago style bullshit.
Right, it doesn't like fall apart. Like you can still manage to one-hand it if you're experienced enough.
It's like closer to having. So you've had Sicilian pizza, like the square pie, deep dish ish. It's kind of like somewhere between that and Chicago, but it's not the flaky bullshit crust from Chicago. It's like actual dough.
Oh yeah, this sounds like it appeals to my interest.
Yeah, and all they got is a phone. No delivery. They've never delivered. They've been in business for like 35 years. They've literally.
That's like my spot in the Bronx, the place that I talked about before, Morris Park Pizza. They don't deliver.
You want that pizza? Come get it.
None of that Uber Eats shit or Grubhub or any of that shit. Like, you want it, you got to go get it.
So I went to Red Planet like 3-4 weeks ago, maybe even more than a month ago, because I borrowed some mics off of them to run some sessions that I wanted to test them to see if I wanted to buy them myself. And when I got down there, it was like 4:30. I called on the phone, and the girl's like, yo, we're closing at 5:15 today. So if you're not here at 5:15, we're throwing your pizza out.
Yep.
And I was like, I'll be there. I will be there. And I walked in at like 10 after 5, and she was like, we were getting ready to toss your pizza because we're leaving. Yeah. And I tossed the money down, and I ran out the door.
You were like lead foot up in that motherfucker?
Yeah. But I think Red Planet and the pizza place are less than a mile apart. It's not
I'm pretty sure it's still entirely family that runs that place and works there. Those
are the best.
They will work their ass off exactly within business hours, but as soon as that whistle blows, any existing pies are in the trash and we're the fuck out.
Oh man,
because we made more than enough money.
Yep.
Wow.
So
that's wild.
Next time you're down here, if we end up going down to the Philly area, we'll have to pick up a pie.
Grab me, because now I live in the city. I haven't been to Gaetano's.
There's nowhere to sit in there.
Yeah.
So we got to go somewhere else.
Occasionally, my parents will they'll entice me to come home for a visit. Like, yeah, we're gonna Gaetano's tonight. I'll be like, I'll be there.
Yeah, we'll find a place to go.
What I normally do is when I go there, I buy the pizza, but I'm like, yo, don't cut it. Don't cut it because I got to up when I get home. And cut pizza doesn't warm up the same as uncut pizza.
Yep.
So I got a pizza stone, and I just heat that bitch up to like 375, toss the whole thing in there for like 15 minutes or less, and when I pull it out, it's just right.
Using science up in that shit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's the way to do it.
It's important.
I'm with it.
All right, gentlemen.
Yes. Well, thank you, Marty.
Absolutely.
For the pizza discussion and fucking wrestling and Star Wars and all the other shit that we go on and about.
Good times. Well, it was shorter than the last episode I was on, and then we're going for brevity this time. The last one was clocking like 4 hours, so.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of short for us, but
nice.
That's fine.
We're working on it, people.
We're working on it. We're working our way down. Eventually, we'll get a 2-hour show.
There you go.
Maybe. I hope. Possibly. Anything else to add, Mr. Carmichael?
I got nothing.
Okay, terrific. The
When's
Upgrade
this coming
Podcast, probably
tomorrow.
Thursday.
That's actually going to come out this week. All right.
Yeah, it'll be this week. So
if you're around Greencastle, Pennsylvania, Iron Price is playing a show.
Oh yes.
It's gotten moved. I forget what the place is called, but you have Facebook, and our band's called Iron Price. And then Labor Day weekend, we're playing Lacey VFW in New Jersey with some cool bands. So come check it out.
Yeah, so. We'll put the Iron Price info in the description. As we.
If you made it this far, there's a plug for your ass.
There you go. They're actually good, unlike my band.
Your band is better than our band.
You're biased.
My band is better than both of your bands because I don't have a band and I know better. No, I'm actually in Dead Torches, but
saved time versus sick riffs is a compelling argument these days.
It is very compelling. Like this is one of the things I was talking to Matt earlier. I was like, I don't actually miss playing shows. I just miss making music.
I feel it.
You know, I'll say this, and I don't want to start a conversation as we're trying to fucking wrap this up, but I miss playing shows, but I don't miss being around people that I'm probably going to end up arguing with about stupid shit. With the current political climate and everything being such a fucking mess about vaccines and masks and all this other shit, like I kind of just don't want to be around people because I don't need to have these damn conversations. Like, if you want to talk to me about music, that's cool.
The pandemic, so like that's not really much of a gear shift for me.
Yeah.
No, I scope out a room for who I don't want to talk to. I was just like,
and avoid. Well,
avoid the noise.
Do me a favor. Tell Ladybug I said what's up.
Yeah, as you heard, she was throwing out her signals right there for you. So.
And I think I'll see you in like a week or two because I'm going to come down there and we're going to get donuts and hang out.
Labor Day weekend, right?
Yep.
Where are you going for donuts?
Federal donut, baby.
Federal.
I'm going to pick up some Dotties for the vegan.
Federal, as previously discussed on this podcast.
Well, it's a very important thing.
Yes.
Yes, donuts are important.
And I will say, having tasted them, thanks to our wonderful friend Steve Huey, they were fucking good.
Bang.
I'm with it.
Yes.
Anyway, theupgradepodcast.net for all of your social media and listening needs and donut needs and pizza needs, etc. And that's it. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode of us talking about bullshit.
And next week will definitely not be about wrestling.
Not be about wrestling. Unless
Papa Shango come back on Wednesday. Let's go.
something ridiculous happens.
Are we all going to throw up on the screen?
Unless Vince McMahon shows up on AEW.
Oh,
man. It was me all along.
You know, I'm sorry. Much more likely Triple H shows up on AEW. All right. Later, guys. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Peace.